So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about street hypnosis. Street hypnosis is becoming a more popular pastime amongst hypnotists, and it is a pastime. And the idea is you go to some public place where there's normal, everyday people who know nothing about hypnosis, and you do like the equivalent of a mini stage show with them, just for the fun of it. It's kind of cool, right? It's kind of like doing magic moments, just with extra pizzazz, right? Now, who here has ever hypnotized someone on the streets without actually, knowing them beforehand? Anyone? It's kind of fun, isn't it? Right? The thing I want you to know about street hypnosis, number one, it's very simple, it's very easy. You'll have an audience that self-selects. In other words, those people that agree to street hypnosis will be the perfect subject anyway, for the rule. Number two, it's just a bit of fun, folks. So even if it goes a little bit of egg on your face, no big deal. It's just fun. Number three, you always have your subject's safety at hand. So the idea of this is something charming, something fun to do. Now, if you want to evolve street hypnosis beyond what people are commonly doing, my version of street hypnosis goes beyond that. That's where conversation hypnosis comes in. We end up just doing these run-by love attacks where people end up having this amazing life as a result of talking to you. But that's more going about covert hypnosis. So I guess you could call that covertstreethypnosis.com. Does that make sense? So here's how you do street hypnosis very simply. Come on forward. Your name is Harold, right?
Right. No, Shane.
No. Oh, Shane. Sorry, I was thinking about Harold over there.
That's okay.
Now, we're about to start the street hypnosis demo, and the most important things about any street hypnosis demo is you always want to keep your hypnotic principles well at the top of your mind. So the first thing you keep in the side of your mind is the ABS formula. You want to absorb their attention, bypass the critical factor, and stimulate their attention. Just watch as in a moment I start taking control of the subject's attention and start doing the induction from that point forward. Now there's a couple of things we're going to be looking for to make our life easier, and we'll point them out as we go along.
Do you want to do some hypnosis?
Sure.
Look at me, Shane. Turn your feet over here. Put your feet straight. Look at me.
So you'll notice now we've done a little bit of compliance. I've got his attention. I'm checking to see how well he responds, and he's being very responsive. The next thing to do is to start the formal hypnotic process. So what we're doing here is we're getting the hypnotic contract. I'm asking him, do you want to go into trance? And he goes, sure, yes I do. At that point, I have freedom to do all kinds of bizarre things, and he expects to be responding in all kinds of bizarre ways. It makes my life a lot easier. Now, can we do this completely covertly? Run up to a random person, whack them in trance, and run off again before they know what's happened? Sure, I've seen it happen, but there are a few problems with that approach. The first problem is you don't have compliance. You don't even know what kind of a subject is in front of you. Half the time it might work. The other half the time you might be into a world of trouble. Because you see, what you've just done is you've tried to impose your will on someone without their permission. And that can aggravate a lot of people. So if you're going to do street hypnosis, I strongly recommend just get their acceptance. Now there's something else that happens when you have the hypnotic contract in place. As a rule, people will tend to self-select. In other words, if someone volunteers for hypnosis, it tends to be because they want to experience hypnosis. In other words, you've got exactly the right mindset in place to make your street hypnosis successful. So you want to have the hypnotic contract in place. You want to ask them, would you like to experience it? Because the moment they say yes, the next step becomes that much easier. It's another form of indirect test to see whether or not you've got the right subject in front of you. Of course, how they say yes will tell you volumes. In this case, the subject said yes quite directly, no problem. Other times, there might be a hesitant yes, there might be a fearful yes, there might be a challenging yes. All these situations will be dealt with differently. The fears have to be dealt with, either with your manner, in terms of you're very gentle, you're very allowing, you're letting the person go through the experience at a rate that's actually going to be pleasant for them. If on the other hand it's more challenging though, you want to make sure that you figure out what's going on here. Is he trying to prove that hypnosis can't work on him? In which case, that's not the person to be doing street hypnosis with. Now, can you do street hypnosis with that person? Sure. But before you formally begin, you can be doing all kinds of covert principles, frame control, reframing, and maybe even some mind-bending language in order to get leverage on that person. What you're looking for is an agreement mindset, not a challenge mindset. It's not a question of try and resist me and notice you can't. That comes later once you've already got the agreement to start with. That's part of the hypnotic illusion in terms of what the audience is seeing. So you want to ask them, do you want to go into a trance? Because if they refuse, well, that's no big deal. You'll find someone else. If they refuse and kind of still want to go for it, well, then you can do a little bit of work around it. And if they accept, but they accept poorly, in other words, with a challenging mindset or with a distracted mindset, well, then you have a little bit more work to do before you'll accept them as your subject. And by the way, I say that quite deliberately. Always treat your hypnosis with a lot of respect. And then that way, people will treat you and what you do with a lot of respect. So that means if someone grudgingly volunteers for hypnosis, don't use them. They're not being respectful. You can use those people, but after you've made them jump through all kinds of hoops so they deserve the right to be able to experience hypnosis with you. This is very important because, again, it sets the right context for everything. It sets the context that what you're doing is valuable, that their experience is valuable, that they're going to have a positive experience, and it's a powerful experience. So do you see how just in a few seconds we've done a lot of testing, we've made sure the ground is fertile, and we're ready to begin the hypnosis. Now, as we've done all these things informally, I'm going to build those things more formally into the quote-unquote induction process as well. So now I'm actually going to get massive compliance, and I'm speeding up the rate. The reason for speeding up my rate is to give his conscious mind less ability to analyze what's going on. I want him following each step of my suggestion, first voluntarily, because soon that will turn to involuntary compliance. So look at me, step this way, turn around, take a deep breath. All these things are an example of giving a very direct suggestion, and if he follows it voluntarily, he's that much closer for it happening involuntary. So using speed and loading him up with different instructions of things to follow, those two things will overload his conscious mind, which now gives the unconscious mind a chance to carry on filling the compliance element. It's a pattern that's already been set. And of course, if the conscious mind's overloaded, it can't interfere anyway. So it's partly an overload principle, but it's partly a compliance principle, all rolled into one simple 2-3 second routine.
Breathe in, breathe out. Sleep all the way deeper. That's right, deeper, yes, all the way deeper.
Notice how the induction itself is a no-brainer. It takes a fraction of a second. The simple words sleep and a slight mild jerk. Now, here's something which is very important for you to realize. If you haven't trained with me already, it might look like I'm wrenching his neck and pulling him forward. I am not doing that. It's very important that you have your client's or your subject's safety uppermost inside your mind. The last thing I want you to do is go out there and try an instant induction on someone and end up wrenching their neck out or dislocating your shoulder because he's using so much force. And I've seen this happen. Especially if you're a big guy and you're working with a smaller person, say an old lady, you do not want to be crunching people's necks. That's a bad thing. So notice, if you re-watch that segment, the induction itself, it's actually a very gentle tap on the back of the head. The rest happens with the voice. In other words, I'm encouraging him to come forward and lean on my body. I'm bringing him in slightly with the other hand in terms of pulling his body forward, but it's not a jerk, it's not a pull. I'm tipping his body forwards. I'm looking for two things to tell me that he's handing control, for the moment at least, over to me. He's handing, shall we say more importantly, responsibility for the experience to me. It's not so much control as such, because he can wrest that back any time he wants to, really. It's more a question of giving over responsibility. He's saying, you know what? I don't really know what's going on here. I don't care. You tell me what to do for a change, and I'll just do it. In order for me to be able to have that, I'm going to be looking for physical relaxation and a sense of his balance. Now, these two components are not necessary in order to have someone in a trance. Not in the least. But what we're doing here is street hypnosis. We want to have people who can experience things very quickly, very easily, and for that we need to have a mental condition in place. When someone's body is totally physically relaxed and they have their whole weight on you, in other words, they are trusting you with their balance, you, if you step away, will make them fall over. You, if you stand solid, will make them stand firm and safely. They're handing over responsibility for their safety to you. At that point, you have the right mindset in order to be able to do some cool hypnotic effects and so on. If you don't have that, then they've wrested a little bit of control, responsibility. They're saying basically, I don't trust you enough to let you take my balance, to let myself be relaxed in your presence. And if that is the case, you need to make them trust you. So look, as we continue this induction, it's going to happen a few times that I'm actually going to amplify the relaxation, amplify that handing over of responsibility, so that I really have a sense of I am now running the show here. He's trusting me and he's really looking to me for guidance rather than deciding for himself what experience to have right now.
Deeper still. The deeper you go, the better you feel. The better you feel, the more amazing things can happen.
So notice the inductions happen now, and we've gone through a deepening sequence here. We've gone through the two things I said I was going to look for. Relaxation. Notice how I jiggled the arm a little bit to test for the relaxation. And also notice how I take a little step back, because his weight was on my shoulder so much that I had to brace myself to be able to take his weight. This is a very, very good sign. I'm pretty much 90% of the way there now. Notice how the magic of the instant induction isn't the word sleep. That just triggers the whole thing off. It's what you do immediately before and immediately after the actual induction. So with all the little compliance routines we did at the beginning, we're setting fertile ground ready for the induction. Sleep is the obvious induction, what everyone sees and hears. And then the deepening instructions. Go deeper, all the way. The deeper you go, the better you feel. All the way. That's now. Deeper now. More and more. More of that. That's all an example of deepening language, so that he takes that trance experience and continues to deepen it. What might happen otherwise, you see, is if he doesn't know what to expect. Let's face it, he's never done hypnosis before. He doesn't know what's expected of him. So he might go into trance for a brief moment and then get all embarrassed and think, hey, everyone's looking at me. What am I supposed to do? Maybe I'll just open my eyes and check with him what I need to do. You see, at that point, though, it looks to you as though your inductions failed. And everyone goes, oh, look, his eyes are open. He can't be in trance. And then, of course, then he starts thinking, oh, my eyes are open. I can't be in trance. So you've succeeded, and you've managed to grasp defeat right out of the jaws of victory, because it's the follow-through that matters the most. So always remember this on all instant inductions. It's the follow-through that matters the most. Keep them going deeper until you have them in the right state. Their arms are relaxed, their weight is on you, and you have that sense of they're handing over responsibility for their experience over to you. Now, in terms of deepening techniques, you can do all kinds of things. The simplest deepness is to say the deeper you go, the better you feel, the better you feel, the deeper you go, which means the deeper you go, the better you feel. And there's a kind of a little round robin that goes around this way. My preference in deepening is to be very indirect about the deepening. In other words, I'm going to feed back into his experience that part of what he's doing which is unconscious, which is actually what I want. So remember, I'm looking for two key things during the induction. How relaxed is his body, how soft are his muscles, and secondly, how much balance does he give me? The more that happens, the more I'll praise it, saying, that's right, a little more of that, that's it now, that's it, that's good, deeper now, deepen that, do more of that. More of what? Well, that what happens when I actually feel something happen. If he's a little bit tense, I'll go, no, more than that. More than that. If he gets more tense as I'm saying this, I'll say, not that way, the other way. That's it. There you go. That's the one. So notice, without telling him to relax, I'm telling his body to relax. I'm feeding back his mechanism. Why am I doing this? Why don't I just say to him, no, just relax and give me your balance? Well, I could do that, and it'll probably work pretty well too. Now, the difference is, if I tell his unconscious mind directly, in other words, I feed back his responses, then his unconscious mind is responding to me. I have gone straight to the S part of the ABS formula, which is to stimulate an unconscious process. If I tell him consciously, oh, just relax and give me your balance, he might choose to relax. He might choose consciously to give me his balance. And that's all well and good. I can still utilize that. It helps the trance process immensely. But it helps it so much more when the unconscious mind makes that choice, when the unconscious mind responds. So in order to limit the conscious involvement, I can't talk to the conscious mind. I can't tell the conscious mind what to do. So I'm going to be as ambiguous or vague about my instructions, but as clear as possible as far as the unconscious is concerned. So when I feel his body relaxing, I'll actually encourage it. That's right, more. That's right, more now, even more. Notice how my tone also shifts. I'm not going, more relaxed, which is very tense and abrupt. I'm saying more relaxed. That's it, more than that. If, on the other hand, he's tense, I might say, not that way, go the other way. That's it. That's it. There you go. No. That's it. So notice how, just with my language, you can already get a sense of tracing. Is he relaxing? Is he tensing? Is he relaxing? I'll do the same with the balance, right? So I might actually push back on him a little bit. So if he's not giving me his full balance, I might pull him into me a little bit and say, a bit more of this, a bit more. Now, if he's pulling back at that point, he goes, not that way. And if he relaxes again, I'll go, that's it. There you go, all the way. That's it, all the way. That all the way, of course, is an implication of deepening, but more than deepening, like a super deepening, if you like. So all these things are happening in just a few seconds. And that's one of the reasons that the trance develops so quickly.
The more amazing things that happen, the more wonderful your life will be. In a moment, I will count from 1 to 3.
So now we have them in trance. We've stabilized the trance with some light deepening routines. What do we do next? Well, the next thing is to prepare them for an impressive street hypnosis demonstration. How do we do this? Well, technically, I can go straight into one right now. But I don't want to do that just yet. I want to load the deck. I want to stack the deck in my favor and load things up, so by the time I get to give a suggestion, like arm catalepsy, for the arm to be stiff and rigid, or for them to forget their name or forget a number or something like that, I want to make sure I've set the perfect conditions inside his mind before I even go there. And I want to test that those conditions actually exist. What you're about to see is a little trick I picked up from a friend of mine, Jeff Stevens, a great hypnotist. And it makes use of two very important principles. The first principle is the fractionation principle. Essentially in fractionation, when you put someone in trance and you bring them back out of trance, the second time you re-induce trance, they'll go deeper and more quickly than before. It's just one of those quirks of nature. So if you hypnotize them 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, each time it becomes easier to go into trance, and it becomes easier for them to go deeper into trance as well. So rather than have to wait 3 or 4 days to be able to do that, you can do it all in just one sitting. So you'll induce trance, you bring him out. You induce trance, you bring him out. You induce trance, you bring him out. Each time, of course, he'll go deeper and deeper and deeper. So that's the fractionation principle. The second principle I want to mention here is the idea of a covert test. And this is the real genius that Jeff Stevens showed me, and I really, really like this idea. When you bring them out of trance, you're already testing them for how responsive they are to your suggestions. But you're doing it in such a way that no one can ever notice whether or not you failed. Only you will know. And then when you've had the test completed to your satisfaction, you move on. If he fails the test, even though he doesn't realize he's failed anything, you're being alerted to the fact that you need to do something before you go into some of the more obvious effects. So what's this covert test then? The covert test is very simple. We're going to look for him to light up like a light bulb. We're going to give him lots of energy or enthusiasm, a strong positive emotion. I want to see his face light up when he comes out of trance with the positiveness of that emotion. Because when that happens, he's taking the suggestion. If, on the other hand, he comes out of trance in the usual way, which is to come out slowly and languidly, eyes open, he'll reorient a little bit, kind of lazily, and then just stretch a little bit, and it takes a lot longer to come back. It's kind of like when you wake up in the morning, most people wake up and they kind of laze in bed a little bit and stretch and yawn and kind of get up, and even 10 minutes after they've got out of bed, you can tell that they've only just got out of bed. The same is true of hypnosis. That's the, shall we say, the natural de-escalation of trance. So I'm going to break the natural de-escalation by giving a specific suggestion that you'll be totally alert and full of energy or full of vibrancy. That way, when his eyes open, I look for the first expression that comes to him. If that expression lights up with enthusiasm, with energy, with vitality, I'm set. If it has not, well, in that case, I need to do a little bit more work. As a rule, I'll do at least 3 cycles of fractionation, whether or not he passes the covert test. If he's passed the test those 3 times, then great, I'll just carry on. If he hasn't, I might do it a few more times, or I'll change direction and do something different so I can discover what's going on, what's preventing this person from responding the way I want to, and once I fix that, then I can continue. So go ahead and watch as we do that now.
At the count of 3, you'll open your eyes and you'll have this amazing feeling of excitement rushing through your body, and not before. Each time we do this, it'll get even stronger. So ready for that now. 1, coming up slowly. 2, eyes open. 3. Very good. How are you doing?
Doing great.
And sleep all the way down. Deeper. That's right. Deeper and deeper still. You're doing great.
Notice how when he comes back, he's pretty chipper. I actually ask him to contribute. How are you doing? I feel great. Why? I want to hear his voice. I want to hear what's the quality inside his voice to know how much is back. If he goes, I feel great, well, then he hasn't followed the instructions properly. The other thing that this does is it distracts him. It gives his conscious mind something to do, so that when I do the instant induction again in a moment's time, well, it becomes that much more of a surprise, which means it drops him that much more deeply into trance, and then, of course, I can utilize that more fully.
We're going to do this one more time. Each time that you open your eyes at the count of 3, you'll come back rushing even more fully. That amazing, exciting experience at the count of 3 and not before.
Now, I've given him some very interesting instructions here. At that count and not before. So I'm giving him an expectation. In a moment, I'm going to do this a few more times. You've done 1 cycle, now you know what the cycle is. We'll do it a few more times. I'll count to 3, you'll open your eyes, feeling this rush of excitement. It'll be more intense each time. Again, the more intense is a second layer of the covert test. I want to see that intensity becoming stronger and stronger each time, which tells me he's going deeper and deeper into a trance each time. He's responding more and more powerfully. A good thing. The next thing I'm doing is I'm setting a time code for the response. In other words, at a count of 3 and not before, you'll open your eyes and you'll have that experience. At some times, I may want to just delay the count. 1, 2, 3. If he opens his account and eyes after the count of 2, that means he's consciously anticipating the 3 and is jumping into it. He's, in other words, taking control of the situation too much. If, on the other hand, at the count of 2, he's still sitting there or standing there, totally relaxed, following your suggestions, and only at count of 3 do those eyes pop open and that sense of thrill or excitement wash through his body, at that point, he's responded to another layer within my covert test. So notice how we have many layers in this covert test. We have the excitement, enthusiasm. We've got the energy building up within that state each time. And we've got the time sequence. You'll do this when I tell you, not before and not after. This will be especially important later when we start doing the street hypnosis demonstrations, because at that point, they'll be responding immediately to your suggestion when you say it. You're training them to respond when you say it rather than giving a time lag of 2 or 3 minutes, which can sometimes happen. So as well as the covert test, I'm also training my subject for speed, to respond quickly so it becomes more dramatic as a demonstration.
Now, when you hear me say the word sleep, you will go to this state and even deeper than this. Come on, a little deeper. There you go. That's better. Deeper than this each and every time. That's right.
I'd like to pause there for a moment just to draw your attention back to something I warned you I would do. Come on a little deeper. The reason I'm saying that is because when I re-induced trance a second time, I didn't have his full balance and I didn't have his full relaxation. In other words, he didn't go to a deeper hypnotic state than before I finished the exercise. Now, it's a small difference, but I'm not going to accept it because I want to make sure that he's following my instructions completely and he has the most profound hypnotic state possible for that point in time. I know he can go deeper than this because he's already been there just a few seconds ago. So I'm going to make sure he goes to at least as relaxed, as deep, as, shall we say, vulnerable a state as he was a moment before. And by vulnerable, what I mean, of course, is he's put all his balance on me. He's relying on me to maintain his balance for him. And notice that when that happens, again, I reinforce it. A tap on the shoulder, that's right, that's good. I'm tapping him on the shoulder to reinforce the power of the suggestion. I'm using many different senses, my voice and my touch at the same time.
At the count of 3, your eyes will open. You'll have this amazing rush of excitement. You will feel so good that nothing else will ever compare. Until, of course, after we finish, because I'll show you how to do this for yourself anytime you want to.
I just made a mistake. I said to him, you're going to have such an amazing feeling that nothing ever again will compare. What I meant, of course, was to say something along the lines of that nothing you've ever experienced before will even come close. I did not mean to limit his future. Remember, when you're using hypnosis, you have your client's well-being, their safety, at the top of your mind. Now, because I misspoke, I have to change that now. In other words, I've accidentally put a seal on this person saying that the feeling you're about to have is as good as you'll ever feel. Any time after we've worked together, you'll never feel better than this again. That's a terrible thing to do to someone. It's closing them down in terms of what they're capable of. So rather than close them down, what I'm going to do is opening him up even further. So having made the incorrect suggestion, I'll just cancel it and say, of course, until you have this other experience. I'll show you how to have this so you can have this the rest of your life and even more powerfully and so on. So now I've turned my mistake into something useful. In other words, something which gets me more leverage so that I can motivate him to respond even more powerfully to what we're doing. So I don't want to limit him. I want to empower him. That's whole mindset in terms of what you're doing. If his unconscious mind realizes that you're on his side, you're not taking things away, just adding positive things to his life, well, you better believe it's going to be on your side. It's going to have lots of reasons to do what you ask them to do. So your demonstrations will go off without a hitch because it's in everyone's interest to succeed rather than for them to fail.
1 coming up slowly, 2 and 3. Fantastic, and sleep all the way. That's right, very good. Deeper and deeper still.
Notice how on the second level of fractionation already, he instantly drops forward and actually forces me to take a step back. The reason that's happened, of course, is because he's put all his balance on me. And I have to take a bracing step backwards to be able to absorb the shock or the weight of it. That's a great sign. Notice how the first fractionation cycle, he didn't do that. I kept my balance pretty easily. So this is a great sign that the suggestion you'll go to a trance as deep as this or even deeper has taken. So you notice how each time I'm doing this, it looks just like I'm just warming up to do something, but really I'm doing all these subtle little tests along the way to make sure that I get as much responsiveness out of him as possible. As far as I'm concerned, at this point, I already know that he's ready to do the work. I'm going to do a few more fractionation cycles just to be thorough, but honestly, this will be the point that I absolutely know I can do good stuff with him, it'll come off without a hitch, and it will really work well.
You're doing excellent. We'll do it one more time. At the count of 3, the most amazing thrill rushing through your body. 1, 2, 3. And sleep all the way down. You're doing great. Fantastic. Now we're ready to do this.
So we've now fractionated. I did one more fractionation cycle just to be thorough, although technically I didn't need it. Now we're about to start doing the work. Before I do that, I want to make sure that I've left no stone unturned. So I'm going to give a general, shall we say, suggestion for responsiveness. Again, the basic idea of this came from my friend of mine, Jeffrey Stevens, and again, a great street hypnotist. And it's a wonderful suggestion. Basically, the essence of it is this. Everything I say from this point forward becomes your reality. That's it. If everything I suggest becomes a reality, there's no thinking, there's no mediation, it just becomes real, well then we have the perfect conditions for hypnosis, do we not? So that's the only thing we want to make sure that he understands, that I'm not expecting him to think about anything, I'm just expecting him to accept everything. If he accepts that suggestion, great, we're on to a winner. If for some reason he hesitates on accepting that suggestion, well, I'll need to work around that a little bit, check out what's going on. I might bring him back and talk to him or something to make sure that there's no concerns or blocks along the way. Because if there are concerns, this is the last level at which you can flush it out. After that, well, you run the risk of failing with one or two of the suggestion experiments or the techniques. Honestly, even if that happens, it's not a big deal. It's just all in good fun anyway. But it's good to be thorough, so we may as well put those suggestions in here at this point.
From this point forward, I want you, Shane, to make sure that everything I say becomes absolutely your reality. Whatever I say, you experience. No matter how strange it might seem, whatever I say, you will experience. Only for the purposes of our little street hypnosis demo.
You'll notice I put in a little suggestion there. Only for the duration of our street hypnosis demo. What am I doing here? Well, recall, I'm not trying to seal off my subject so they become mindless zombies for the rest of their lives, responding to me as hypno-slaves. Apart from the fact that that's just kind of weird anyway, it's something which is not going to be very pleasant for him, and if there is any fear of any kind of mind control or anything like that going on, he might still have some resistance if I leave that open. Because to say you'll always respond to everything I say completely and utterly, wow, that's really a big deal at that point. And some people might start fighting back purely for self-preservational reasons, and they'd be right to. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting a little limit in terms of what I'm doing. I'm saying, look, this is all going to be a bit of fun. Whilst we're doing this, I'll need you to be in this mindset. And of course, once we stop doing this, you can go back to your regular mindset and have a great life and so on. So I'm basically putting him on notice that this will not be forever. I'm not going to embarrass him. I'm not going to do anything bad. And I'm not going to try and put my hooks into him and force him to live his life the way I want him to, because doing so might accidentally cause some resistance when the unconscious mind starts thinking, hang on a second, do I really want this person telling me how to lead the rest of my life? So just a little throwaway comment I put in there as a safety mechanism, both for him, so he can let himself go more fully into the experience. It's only a time-limited letting go, if you like. And it's also safer for me, because once the trance is over, if I have inadvertently forgotten that I've just told him that everything I say is going to be his reality, and I don't wipe out that suggestion, then two things can happen when he comes out of trance. The first thing that might happen is that when he comes out of trance, his unconscious assumes that the hypnotic control, the hypnotic effect is over, hence the whole thing's over. However, on occasion, that assumption may not happen. In fact, the suggestion's there and it's still active, and it could remain active for the rest of his life. Now, if that was to be the case, well, that really is not a good place to be leaving a person in. So I'd much rather make sure that that is being removed, and if I forget to make it remove, well, I put it in here. In other words, this is only for the duration of this demonstration. Hence, as soon as this demonstration is over, the whole effect wears off. It keeps me safe, it keeps them safe, everyone's happy, and everyone's going to have a very good time.
As a result of this, that's right, I will show you, very good, I will show you how to have that amazing feeling whenever you want or need to.
Notice how we're about to head into the major effects, and I'm just adding one more piece of leverage. I'm giving him more reasons to respond. In other words, the more fully he responds, the more he succeeds with the demonstration, the more wonderful he's going to be. He's going to get a hypnotic goodie, a present. So it's in his interest to respond powerfully. This is just adding more fuel to the fire to make sure that we have a nice, demonstrative, powerful demonstration for everyone to enjoy.
Nod your head if you accept and understand this. Very good.
Of course, my last layer of checking here, my last test, is just to ask him, nod your head if you accept and understand this. Really, I want to know he understood what's going on, and secondly, that he's okay with all of this. Notice I don't ask him to accept it all until I've done three things. I told him what I want, everything I say will be your reality. I've told him where the limits of that power is. In other words, it's only going to be for the process what we're doing here right now. In other words, it's not going to be there forever. So it's taking care of any fears or concerns he might have. In other words, a reason he might have for rejecting the idea. And thirdly, I've given him a motivation, a reason for accepting it. So I've given him what's going to happen. I've taken away the reasons for rejecting the idea, and I've given him a reason to accept the idea. With those three things together, we have the perfect conditions for us to actually get acceptance and hence get a very powerful show. And notice how this whole thing only took a few minutes anyway, and it's kind of interesting to watch just on its own.
At the count of three, you'll open your eyes and you will feel totally out of trance. You will think you're totally out of trance.
You'll feel you're out of trance. You'll think you're out of trance. Notice there is a hidden implication here, which is basically you'll think you're in trance, but you won't be. So the idea here is that he can function as a normal person. He'll look out of trance, he'll think he's out of trance, but then, of course, when I do the demonstrations with eyes open, waking suggestion, so to speak, it becomes that much more dramatic. I'm just ensuring the conditions are a little bit more dramatic for what we're doing. I could do all these things with eyes closed and it would still be pretty dramatic. But if I do it with eyes open, and then I could also go into the whole routine of, hey, are you awake right now? Yes, I am. Are you sure? Yes. Well, why is your arm stuck this way? I don't know. And that kind of creates a nice dramatic contrast that everyone can kind of wow and ooh and ah over. This is, of course, where hypnosis gets a reputation of the hypnotist being in control of someone else. If you've been watching the commentary up to this point, you'll realize, of course, that control is more of an illusion. They're handing responsibility for their experience over to you, not necessarily the... So this still is a cooperative venture. You want their motivation, you want them motivated to carry on working with you, and you want them to cooperate with the whole process so that you can create this powerful and dramatic demonstration.
1, 2, 3, coming out slowly. Very good. Stick your hand out. Make it strong, stiff and rigid like an iron bar. Make it strong. Feel it getting stronger. Lock it tight, stronger and stronger. Lock it tight.
Notice how we're in the middle of doing an arm bar or an arm catalepsy suggestion. We're going to get the stiff arm, basically. There's a couple of things that are happening here. First of all, I'm going straight into it because there's no real need to wait anymore. Secondly, I'm letting my language speed up. I'm being more insistent so that if there is any consciousness left over that might come online to try to think and analyze about this, he doesn't have a chance because he's being overloaded with suggestions for a stiff arm. The next thing I'm doing is notice my hand movements. There are two things that my hands are doing. The first thing they're doing is they're pulling on the muscles. They're pulling the arms, making them rigid and taut. So I'm giving the suggestion this way, forwards, outwards, straighter, rather than bending them or shaking the arm, which is a suggestion for relaxing. You'll see that happening later on. The other thing I'm doing is I'm taking away the relaxation I gave him moments before. So I'm testing for the arm muscles to be tense. You see, there are two groups of muscles in the arm. There's those that bend the elbow and those that stretch the elbow. We want to make sure that both groups of muscles are activated. This is called balanced tonicity. When both muscles are totally activated, they're in total balance and the arm won't bend. So I'm looking for those muscles to become rigid. They want to become stiff. If it's just there and I can feel those muscles being loose, well, it tells me that he might well fail in terms of the arm being stiff when I give him a challenge later on. Why might he fail? Well, maybe he hasn't put enough effort into it, enough focus. Maybe there's still enough relaxation that when he tries to bend it, consciousness will slip in and allow it to bend. So what I'm looking for is the ideal conditions. Make their arm stiff and rigid. Remember, the instructions are for the arm to be stiff and rigid. So I'm looking for them to carry this out as well. Once the entire upper arm is locked, in other words, the bicep and the tricep, the muscles on the top and the bottom of the arm, those become very stiff. Now, after a few seconds of that happening, I can get him to test because now I know the suggestion is taken. I also have a physiological effect on my side. In other words, when muscles become tense and sore, they'll tend to stiffen even further. It's harder to unwind them. So at that point, when consciousness tries to interfere and bend the arm, it's already fighting against the suggestion, unconsciousness, and a bit of a physiological phenomenon all happening at the same time. So I'm really stacking my deck. I'm thoroughly working through the levels to make sure that I have left no stone unturned to make this really work for me.
When you're sure it's so tight you cannot bend it, no matter how hard you try.
The final stage in being thorough with the stiff arm catalepsy thing is a simple suggestion, one that I've taken from a hypnotist called Dave Ellman, a great hypnotist. And this is an ingenious suggestion. It's actually a double bind. The suggestion is when you're sure that no matter how hard you try and bend it, it won't bend, then go ahead and test it. So it's actually asking them to be convinced before the effect rather than afterwards. The other thing that it does, of course, it gives them a chance to let the whole process continue if their mind hasn't quite settled on the idea yet. Well, then it gives them more chance or more time to let their mind settle on the idea and only test it once the idea has fully settled, become real for them. It's a beautiful example of a double bind, and it's going to work very dramatically in our favor. Now that we've gone through all the levels, we've induced the trance, we've tested for responsiveness, we've brought them back out of trance, or at least it seems that way. We've got the arm to come stiff, we've locked the muscles, we've presented the suggestions. Now we've got the double bind in place. Now there's nothing left to do other than to play up the drama of it. Go ahead and test it. and just see what happens when he does.
Try and bend it, and that's right, relax, loose limb.
You'll notice that I don't let the test last for too long. Why? Well, he's quite deeply entranced at this point, and if he tests too hard, there have been cases of people accidentally damaging their own muscles. In other words, pulling with one muscle group and pulling the other way with the other muscle group so hard that the stronger set of muscles ends up tearing the weaker set. I don't want that to happen. This is not a competition in demonstrating toughness. This is purely for him to be convinced and for the audience to be convinced. So I'm watching him. I'm letting him struggle. If the struggle is relatively mild, sure, I'll let him carry on. I might even egg him on to make it harder, more of a struggle. On the other hand, if he's really working hard at it, I'm going to look for the muscle strain in his arm and judge, hang on a second, he's trying a bit too hard right now. He might do himself some damage. At this point, I tell him to stop trying right now. Notice how my hand instantly goes out to take control of the arm. By touching it, it's telling the arm something else is going on here, so pay attention to the next instruction. In other words, stop what you're doing now. Stop struggling. Let the next part of the sequence take place. Of course, the next part of the sequence is to undo the suggestions that you just presented. In order to undo them, you just tell them, of course, the arm becomes loose limb, nice and relaxed, come back down to your side. Now, occasionally, because of this physiological locking phenomenon that we mentioned before, some people might have trouble unlocking them. A very simple way to unlock the muscles is to shake them. This is just a natural physiological thing. If the muscles are used to holding stable in one position, when you shake them, by trying to create the stability again, they're basically relaxing or loosening one way or the other, trying to figure out which way to create balance. It confuses the muscles essentially for a while. That confusion will allow enough relaxation to creep in for your suggestion to take care of the rest of it. So as a rule, I'll start shaking the arm a little bit and say, that's it, loose and relax, loose and relax. Whilst I'm, of course, shaking the arm, I'm also testing for how much looseness, how much relaxation is in it. By the time it's limp and loose like a rag doll, well, I'll know that the effect's worn off again and we're ready to continue with the next phase.
Relax, loose limb. You're doing a great job. Now look at me.
We're moving straight into the next effect. But before we do that, we want to congratulate the client or the subject. Why do we congratulate them? Well, this might be their very first experience with hypnosis. They may have no idea what's expected of them. So lots and lots of positive reinforcement is necessary. That's right, you're relaxed now. That's good. You're doing great. Stiff arm, that's it. And relax all the way through. You did a great job. That was awesome. You're reminding the unconscious mind, this is what you're doing. You're doing the right thing. Do more of this right thing. In that way, of course, you're encouraging them for ever more, shall we say, dramatic performances. Then, of course, we're going to roll straight into the next effect. I'm going to lock his attention just to make sure that I have his attention. Technically, I don't even need that. I know I've got the conditions already set, but I'm always testing for attention. It's our lifeblood as hypnotists. So when I say, look at me, I'm still checking where is his attention at? How much of it do I have? As it happens, if you watch the video, you'll see he's totally locked on me. He's totally fixated. Perfect conditions. But of course, if he would just looked at me casually and looked away again or start looking around, well, it would warn me that I have to do something to contain the situation. In other words, lock his attention again before I move on to the next effect.
Try and walk forward. Your feet are stuck. Try and fall forward. What's going on there?
Notice how the next effect happens pretty quickly. There's no need for me to go into as much dramatic detail as with the arm lock because the law of compounding effect is on our side. Every time someone responds to a suggestion, they respond more powerfully to the next suggestion as well. It's like they're going deeper into trance and becoming more responsive in general. That's one of the reasons why we want compliance, because voluntary compliance is still responding to some degree. It leads closer towards involuntary compliance and ultimately leads to non-voluntary compliance, which has to do with the autonomic nervous system, functions which aren't in conscious control, like bowel movements, heart rate, body temperature, and things like that. But that's not what we need to think about in terms of doing stage or street hypnosis. For the moment, we know that we've got a couple of covert tests. We've done the overt test with the arm. This is a simple thing to do. He succeeded with that. He's now totally in the program. So just by saying something simple like, your feet are stuck, that's it. You don't need any more. It's actually very easy to get the effect. Now, unfortunately, as you watch the effect, you can't actually see the dramatic elements of it. it looks like he's pretty relaxed standing up. In fact, what's happening is, and the camera unfortunately missed this, his legs, his knees kept trying to move forwards to pick up off the ground, and they couldn't. You could see a lot of flex and bend in his knees, and they just wouldn't move. In other words, his feet were stuck to the ground, as per the suggestion. So visually, it's very dramatic. Sadly, of course, the camera angle didn't catch it, so all we end up having is what looks like him standing still, but of course, if you'd been in the audience, it would have been quite a lot of fun to watch.
Try and walk forward. What's going on? You don't know, do you? You really don't know.
You don't know what's going on. For those of you familiar with the non-awareness set, this is a classic non-awareness set maneuver. I'm just bringing it in just because it kind of fits anyway. He's not really responding very much. He's not saying very much. It's a sign that classically that he's in trance. As a rule, when people go into trance, very often, unless you suggest otherwise, their speech reflex becomes inhibited. They lose the ability to speak, or they just don't want to speak. That's happening here right now. So rather than forcing him to speak, I'm going to utilize this to create a more, shall we say, trance-like effect. The non-awareness set is also a very useful way of using hypnosis for a transformational purpose. Essentially what he's saying is, your conscious mind has no idea what's going on. You may as well let the unconscious mind do what it needs to do. And by the way, unconscious mind, what you need to do is X. In this case, X was going to be a nice bit of change work, a nice positive thing for him to take away into his future.
Something must be going on here. That's right, and sleep all the way. This time on your own balance. I'm going to put you up and you can be in your own balance on your feet, deep in trance.
So we play a little bit with the non-awareness set language. We're creating expectation of something positive happening, something very hypnotic, something very unconscious. Then, rather than waste any time doing a dramatic demo here, this is just a very quick demo. It was a 5-minute skit that we were doing. So I thought I want to do a quick demonstration of the finale so we can do a second bit of street hypnosis with a slightly different principle in action. Now remember that I don't really like the idea of street hypnosis just being, look how clever I am as a hypnotist, I'm going to make your feet stick to the floor and your hands and forget names and whatever else. That itself is fine, but it feels a little empty to me, purposeless. So this is where I evolved the new kind of street hypnosis concept, the idea that you basically become a force for good, a positive influence in people's lives. Nowadays, for me, street hypnosis really means you have a quiet conversation with people. They don't even realize they've been hypnotized. It's totally covert. But as a result of talking to you, they feel more positive, more empowered. Life just seems happier. In the case of a more overt demo like this one here, I still want that effect. I still want them to be feeling fantastic. It's kind of like a hypnotic gift. You can think of yourself as a hypnotic version of Santa Claus handing out psychological gifts that people can cherish for a lifetime. Now that the unconscious mind has done all these wonderful things, it's time for you to fulfill your end of the bargain and give them what you promised you'd give them. How we do this is very simple. We'll re-induce trance. Well, there's no brainer at this point. I'm going to put him back on his own balance for 2 reasons. First of all, there's no need for me to test anymore. There's no need for me to carry his weight because that was only there as a test anyway. Now, of course, I don't need the test anymore because he's pretty much there already. The second reason for me to move him back onto his balance but keeping him in trance, it's beginning the process of handing responsibility back to the subject. I'm saying, you maintain your own balance, you maintain your own trance, and by the way, you're going to have this other thing to maintain in your own life as well, which will be the positive hypnotic gift that we're about to go into. So there's lots of little reasons why we're doing this, and of course, the fact that I don't have to carry his weight anymore is not an insignificant element as well.
I'm going to lift this hand only as quickly as it begins to descend by itself. As the hand begins to descend...
Did you spot my mistake there? Well, I'll tell you what it was. I gave him an instruction, and he responded to it before I could finish. In other words, I said, here, your hand's going to be up here, and it's only going to descend as quickly as something's going to happen. That, at least, was my intent. What actually happened is, I said, your hand's going to go up here, and it's not going to descend until something else has happened. Of course, the hand starts going down already at this point. I haven't had the chance to attach my gift to that yet. And as a result, the hand would be going down as totally wasted motion. It's just become this simple hypnotic demonstration, which really isn't that all impressive. Oh, woo, look at that, his arm's going down. Like arms don't do that anyway. So I want to use the arm coming down unconsciously as something that I can attach my hypnotic gift to. So that hand goes down, the unconscious mind makes things happen. Touching the arm down to the lap at that point becomes a signal that the unconscious mind has finished making the unconscious gift a reality for that person. So the first thing I have to do, having made my mistake, having given unclear suggestions, is to remedy the mistake. As the hand starts going down, I grab it, I lift it up again, and I stretch it out for a second. A little brief jerk tells you to stay there for a moment. Then I give them the instructions. That hand will not descend until X, Y, and Z happens. It only comes down as quickly as X, Y, and Z can happen. So at that point, the unconscious mind starts attaching hand movement to unconscious changes. So the hand becomes a barometer telling us how far has the unconscious mind gone in terms of creating the positive outcome that you're looking for. Think of it as a hypnotic egg timer. As the minutes in the egg timer starts going down, the hand starts coming down. By the time the hands touch the lap, the egg timer goes off, the egg's perfectly boiled, and of course, so is your subject.
Your unconscious mind will find places to put this amazing feeling in. So by the time this hand reaches your side, your eyes will open. You will not only feel amazing, you'll also have many situations in your life in which you could feel this amazing feeling. It will take this and transfer it to your work, to your play, to areas where you can really use this feeling. Nod your head if you understand what I mean.
Notice a whole bunch of things we're doing here. I'm giving them very clear instructions. Take the feeling you've just been practicing, this amazing feeling, and put into areas where it becomes useful. It's a simple suggestion. It's in keeping with what we've been doing anyway, and of course, is a natural hypnotic gift. Notice how I'm also touching him as I'm doing this. Each touch emphasizes important elements of that suggestion. That you'll be having this. This will be good for you in your future. And each one, I'm touching him slightly on those suggestions to make them a little bit more potent, give them more sensory awareness to process, to make it more real for them. The other thing I'm doing is I'm giving the unconscious mind a selection of processes. I'm telling it, go into the future and think of these things. Go into the past and find these things. Fit into these different contexts. Find the places where this will be really useful. I'm not just saying, just feel good generally. I'm saying, feel good specifically. Although I'm doing that in a general way. So I'm giving very clear process instructions of when, where, and how to do this. And then, of course, the unconscious mind gets to select the most appropriate examples that fit into the parameters that I set for it.
So watch that hand descend. Notice it descending ever so slowly as your unconscious mind takes this feeling and puts it into places where it can really make a difference for you. And when that hand touches your side, your eyes will open, you'll be out of trance, having had an amazing experience, and knowing how cool this stuff is. Whew, how are you doing, Shane?
Doing great.
Isn't that an awesome experience?
Yes.
Did you enjoy that?
Yes.
It appears that the trance is over, but your job is not. Once they finish the hypnotic experience, the point in time immediately after they come out of trance, there's a kind of hypnotic hangover. So that's a point at which you have another opportunity to do positive things, and it's very important to make sure that you leave them with a positive impression. So the first thing you want to do when they come out of trance is have a big smile on your face, tell them how wonderful they've done, how amazing experience that they've had. And then if they seem to be in that program already, ask them, how was it for you? If they seem to be in doubt, don't ask that question yet. Still load them up with all the reasons they have for having done well. In other words, never ask a question you don't know the answer to ahead of time.
Awesome. Give them a nice round of applause. Thank you very much. Have a little seat.
At the end of the whole thing, especially if you have an audience, make the subject the star of the show. Let them get a nice round of applause. Congratulate them. Of course, if you're going to do more demos with other people, that's great, because now other people have even more motivation to be working with you. They'll get applause. Everyone likes to have positive attention from a crowd. They'll get all the hypnotic gifts. Well, everyone likes having positive forces working for them in their life. They'll get some cool experiences. You see how they're collecting reasons to work well with you. And if nothing else, it's a very elegant way to finish your show. Let someone else take the credit, but of course, you'll get all the love.